Good evening and welcome to the New York Comedy Festival in the Jerome L. Green Performance Space. And now your host from WQXR, Elliott Forrest.
Thank you so very much, and welcome to the Jerome L. Green Space. This is great. We want to welcome the New York Comedy Festival here for the very first time. We're thrilled to have it and house this event tonight. My guest is one of the most popular comics touring today. He's a New York Times bestselling author. His first book is called Dad is Fat, and his latest book is called Food, a Love Story. Please welcome Jim Gaffigan.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you, NPR. I feel accepted. I'm so smart now.
We make you smart.
I think, I always wanted to do some stuff with NPR. I mean, I have done some stuff, but I'm always excited every time I do something. I'm like, I'm smart. I'm smart.
So great to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
I've been a fan for a long time. I know there's a lot of fans out of here for a long time as well. It's a busy time for you. A busy week, a busy month, a busy year.
Yeah, very busy. I mean, I feel like it's always busy, but usually because I have 1,000 kids. So.
I want to get into parenting in detail in a little bit, but you have 5 kids.
Yes.
You're constantly on tour.
Yes.
And now the book tour. Are you ever home?
October was pretty crazy, and it's. My wife and I, we usually, I'll be gone for 2 weekends a month, but October was not like that. So yeah, it's a struggle to make sure, because in the end, I don't want to suck at being a dad. I mean, I know that I'll probably fail, but it's the most important job I'll fail at. So.
Yeah, mine are a little older than yours. I have 2 kids. Definitely want to talk some parenting. I want some advice. I think I can give you some advice as well a little bit later on. But you come from a big family.
I do.
Yeah, the youngest of?
Youngest of 6. And so I recreated the chaos. But the youngest, you don't really know anything about kids. So I didn't know what I was getting into.
Do you put in any stock in the sort of like stereotypes and what the youngest is like and the oldest is like and the middle child?
It's interesting because if you're from a larger family or if you even have a younger sibling, the youngest is always spoiled and a baby. And I'm the youngest, so it's not true.
I was the middle kid, so I always felt like I was always of 3. So
Right.
I was always the deciding vote.
Right.
So if it was the little bitty, cartoons that my sister wanted, or if it was Star Trek that my brother wanted to watch, I always got to pick.
That's sweet.
Yeah, I was right in the middle. You grew up in Chesterton, Indiana.
Yes, it's the metropolis. It's very similar to New York City.
Cultural mecca of Indiana.
Yes, we didn't have a McDonald's until I was in high school, so
That's
seems
awful.
like everyone's quiet. Like in my hometown, they would have been. Yeah, it was amazing. It's amazing.
How big a town is Chesterton? Was it?
I mean, now it's gotten a lot bigger, but I think it was maybe 10,000, maybe 8,000. But there was farmland. There was I grew up in a place where kind of Rust Belt met farmland. So there were friends that I went to parties in trailer parks, and I went to parties where I sat on bales of hay. So it was. But, Chicago is in the distance, and, we could see it from across the lake, and we were like, I'm going there. So, of course, I came here.
And what did your parents do?
My dad was a banker, and my mom was a housewife who did a lot of charity work, and, she raised 6 kids, so...
And the youngest of 6, was there competition, say, for attention or food or anything like that?
There was definitely competition for food. I remember I had an older brother, Mike, who was very mean. I mean, he's nice now, but like I watched The Wonder Years, and I'm like, yeah, that's what it was like, you know. But he would. There was definitely competition for food. Like, I would be eating cereal, and if I had the last bowl of cereal and my brother Mike came in, I knew he would kind of be angry. So yeah, there was definitely competition, and I think humor was very important in my family. The joke in my family is that I'm third funniest.
Who are the other two?
My brother Joe and my brother Mitch, and I always say, yeah, but I have more comedy specials than that. So. Their careers aren't going that well. Yeah.
And were your parents funny too?
I think I think the value of making my mom laugh was very important. My dad was kind of funny. I think some of it was, humor wasn't a huge tool of his. I think it was very much a tool of the children to deal with the chaos of a large family. So I think that he was kind of funny. I mean, I wouldn't, he would probably agree. It wasn't like a huge commodity for him, but it was very important among the siblings. Like doing an impression of my dad probably stopped some of my siblings from beating me up. So,
do you want to do your dad?
Well, New York City, geez. Jim, this is Elliott, right?
Yeah.
It's great to see you. So yeah, he had that cough that I could hear it. Like he could be outside and I'd hear the cough and I'd be like, uh-oh, he's coming in here. Because everyone was frightened of their dad, right?
Yeah, at least at some point.
Yes.
You grew up in a Catholic family.
Yes.
Was that important to you?
No, I was very much my dad studied to be a priest, and then he had 6 kids. So,
Put an end to that.
Yeah, his dad was a denture maker, and back then they made them by hand, and so I think that was kind of a way of getting an education. He was the first one in his family to go to college. And so when I decided to become a comedian, he's like, it took us like 8 generations to get a college education, and now you're doing this. So he was definitely, I don't even remember the question.
I think you've answered it. I was exploring how your Catholic religion is
Catholic
important
thing.
to you.
Yeah, maybe I was just blocking it out. Well, the Catholic thing, it's so strange because I lived in Little Italy here in Manhattan for 20 years across from Old St. Patrick's and never went in there. I never went in there. Like, they could have put a church in my apartment and I still wouldn't have gone in there. And so I was raised kind of culturally Catholic, and then I married my wife, who I describe as a Shiite Catholic. And so, and it's weird because, her mother is like a saint. She already got early admissions to heaven and everything. But it's strange how that kind of, so I've kind of been slow to my faith, and it's like the most awkward thing to talk about because I think it is very personal. But it is weird because my wife's mother was like, I will pray for you. I will, so I'll pray for you for that audition. And initially I'd be like, that's kind of silly. And then I would be like, I'd get a call back and I'd be like, hey, I got a call back. Can you pray for me? So I have kind of it's very strange as a comedian to be a person who believes in God. I think there's part of me that, it's strange. It's kind of inconsistent with a comedian's nihilistic kind of scientific viewpoint on things. But there's also something contrarian about it. It's kind of like, well, fuck you. You know what I mean? Sorry to curse, everyone. Yeah.
And what were you like in high school? What were your activities in high school?
I was, it's weird. I have no memory. But in high school, I went to a very small high school. My graduating class was 25 students. So there wasn't like that John Hughes of the jocks or the nerds, or everyone was everything. And but it was, I was an athlete. But I don't know. I think I was always somebody who tried really hard and got B's. And so like my brother, my one goal in high school was to go to Georgetown University. And my brother went there. And my mom and dad met at Georgetown. And we had a dog named Hoya. And I didn't get in. And I remember I was like, well, what do I do now? So then I killed myself. No. I went to Purdue, which was a great school, and it was kind of that failing there and kind of figuring out that I think that was kind of instrumental in building some persistence in me, kind of like, all right, well, that's not going to stop me. I'm still going to get in there. And then I got in, and I got kicked out. No, I didn't.
Well, what did you study there?
I studied finance. And
what did you think you were going to do?
Well, I'm the youngest of 6, and my dad was a banker, and all my older siblings had studied, I don't know, banjo, just all these, My brother Mike studied international terrorism before there was international terrorism. So
Smart.
he was studying the Basque separatists, right? And he graduated, and he couldn't get a job. So all my siblings couldn't get a job. And so my dad was like strongly encouraged finance. And I was kind of, I was kind of under the belief, well, all right, I guess this is what I'm supposed to do. And it's interesting because I studied finance, and I hated it. And then I got a job as a litigation consultant, and I hated it, and I wasn't good at it. And eventually I reached a threshold where I was like, oh, everyone's lying. You have to do what you want. So I think I was kind of slow to realizing that.
So what year was it that you actually moved here to New York?
It was 1901. No, it feels like that.
You're holding up remarkably well.
I talked to like a barista in a Starbucks yesterday, and they were born in 2012. There's just these moments where you're like, what? How old am I? No, I moved here in 1989, and there's always someone, oh, that's interesting, I was born in 95. And you're like, how?
Well, the reason I ask is because, you didn't have a job here to come here.
I did. I got a job in advertising.
Before you came here?
Yes. I'd come up and interviewed and all that.
Right. So you knew you had something to come up
Yes.
with in advertising.
Yes.
To do what?
I was an account guy, and then eventually I was a copywriter.
But was it? Were you focused on advertising at the time that New York, or was there something about this entertainment mecca that I want to be here?
There was something about New York City that I always loved, and I love all the things. It's the diversity, the energy, it felt like a gathering place for weirdos. I loved all of that, and so I remember I used to like record things, like a little recorder, because I was a serial killer. And but I would do a little diary, like a lunatic, apparently. But I would do these little recorded messages. And I remember thinking, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life, but I know I'm going to find it in New York City. And so I came here and, eventually I did an improv class because I had a fear of speaking, not speaking, public speaking. And
how's that going?
And so then so then someone dared me to do stand-up, but I always wanted to do it. But
You'd always wanted to do stand-up. It was in your mind.
Yeah, I remember watching Phyllis Diller, and I thought she was amazing. And it's like, I wanted to do something like that. And, growing up in Indiana, Letterman, he was like a god. It was like, wow, he got out of Indiana, and he, was doing something very funny, and his sense of humor, like I loved Bill Murray too. It's like their sense of humor where it's sardonic, but it's not punishing of people. Like maybe he's picking on people, but they're kind of in on the joke, which I thought was important.
And that first time that you did Letterman,
Yes.
that must have been huge for you.
It was huge. It was, there was a time when those late night shows were really so important. I mean, they were important from a career standpoint, but they were also a validating thing. Stand-up comedy 25 years ago, at least how I and a lot of my friends, it was a very weird occupation. If you said you wanted to, or you were doing stand-up comedy, it was, oh, you can't afford therapy, so you're going on stage. It was definitely the nut jobs a little bit, right? It was, and so if you were on Letterman or Conan, it was okay. You were a real comedian, and so being able to say that was a big goal, and also the fact that Letterman was from Indiana, and I think really had an influence on my point of view, and the kind of sarcasm was important.
How did you get that spot? I mean, you can't just send your resume in. It must have been
Yeah.
a while. You must have thought you were going to be on it for a while.
Year upon year,
Yeah.
and I was, of my peer group, I was the last of my peer group to get the one of the late night shows.
And
Like
who's the peer group that were like you were just starting and people didn't know
Yeah.
who they were, but you were working? Who were they?
My peer group was Greg Giraldo, Bonnie McFarland, Judah Friedlander. I'm sure I'm forgetting, but you have to understand my mini generation, right above it, or more experienced than us by a year or two, was probably the best kind of generation of stand-up that we've seen, which is Louis C.K. and Todd Barry and Mark Maron and Dave Attell. It's just like they were just this, like Giraldo, Greg and I, we used to drive to Long Island to do shows because we couldn't get any stage time in New York at that point. So it was, it's a very interesting thing to consider that, that Giraldo and Judah, who had some amazing success. But it's weird, because I remember I met Greg Giraldo. I was wearing a suit and he was wearing a suit, and we were at Gladys's Comedy Club, and he was the most clean-cut guy in the room. It was pretty weird.
Let's talk about parenting a little bit. Before we do, tell us a little bit about your wife, Jeannie. You talk about her a great deal in both your books.
Well, she's pretty amazing. I mean, she's, she's very, she's thin and attractive. I look like I had two wives and I ate one of them, but she's this force she's this force of good, and also just really tireless. I mean, it's almost annoying how much energy she has. And so the whole idea that she is the most fertile person on the planet, I don't really, I don't know how many kids we're going to have. It could be 1,000.
You're not done yet.
It's not up to me, But there is something about it where, and I kind of talk about it in Dad is Fat, where there's, it's what would be the worst thing that would happen, that I would, have another kid, I'm very fortunate, and, I can afford it, but I also, I'm already exhausted, It's like, with each kid, I feel like I'm becoming a better person, so I figure I only need another 34. But, so I don't know. It's a pretty amazing thing.
Yeah, the first book, Dad is Fat. Why don't you explain how the title came about?
Well, the title of Dad is Fat comes from my now 8-year-old son. His first complete sentence, probably when he was 4 or 5, on a dry erase board. And he showed it to me, and
you must have been so proud.
The funny thing, as a parent, this. It's like I laughed, right? and then I put them up for adoption. But it's this theme. Like, I'm not making this up. 2 nights ago, I was lying down with my 3-year-old and my 2-year-old sons, and I was, as you will when you're with these little kids, you'll say, when I was a little boy like you guys, I was a little boy just like you two. And when I was a little boy, they called me Jimmy. And my 3-year-old Michael said, "Is that because you were fat?" I'm not making that up. Can you believe that?
I can, actually.
And I laughed, and then he just, like a kid would, repeated it for the next half hour. "Is that because you're fat? Is that because you're fat? Is that because you're fat?" It's unbelievable.
We talked backstage briefly. I have 2 kids. I witnessed the miracle of childbirth twice.
Yes.
Were you there all 5 times?
Yes, and they were all 5 deliveries in our apartment.
Really?
With a midwife. And
tell us what led up to that choice.
well, it's interesting because I am not someone who knows anything, but my wife, when she was first pregnant, she would go to, I think, the Judson Health Center, which is on Prince Street, and or Spring Street, and she was meeting with a nurse who was studying to become a midwife, and so that lady exposed her to the idea of home birth. And my wife brought it up, maybe I would have a home birth. And I thought, yeah, maybe next baby you'll have a home birth. But so, then, of course she studied everything about it, and then she educated me on it. And so the first baby was not intended to be a home birth. It was intended to be a natural birth in a birthing center. And but we were in our apartment, and her mom was there, who had 9 kids, and the mother, or my wife's mother's father, was an obstetrician. So she was like, we gotta go to the hospital now, and there was a midwife there, and she. And my wife was like, "I want to do it here." And I was like, but I'd gone through like 3 months of being educated on this. And, it is very strange. The midwifery, there's like, and that's not what I mean. What I mean is like, there's a strange bigotry towards it that really doesn't make sense. Like, if you look at all the facts, and I know that there's all these stories of, I had a joke about it. It's like, we were going to do a home birth, but we wanted our baby to live, So, but
people would say that to you.
Yeah. It's understandable because it's your baby. You don't want to risk anything. But the facts, as I understand it, are that, home birth it's the only thing I've known. I haven't had any babies, but it's the only thing I've known, and it's pretty amazing. And, obviously no one's going to endanger their child or their wife or anything like that. And I think there's a strange stigma about it, and that's why I'm running for senator.
After this week, I think we'd all vote for you.
Yeah.
So you're in the same apartment you've been in for a while, right?
Well, we were in a 2-bedroom with 5 kids, and then we moved. Now we live in a studio apartment. No, we moved. We moved. I don't know how big it is. My wife designed everything, so it's big. There's 3 rooms for the kids, and we have a bedroom, and it's pretty amazing by New York standards. But it was a loft that we kind of carved up.
You write in your book about trying to be about cool parenting. What exactly is that?
Well, it's interesting because look at me. I'm I'm not somebody who's going to be on the cover of Rolling Stone anyway. So the notion of cool, I just think it's kind of strange when there's something icky about making your kid cool. it's just they should succeed or fail or whatever. They should find their own way. And I just think that the cool parenting kind of like, and it's adorable when a 2-year-old's wearing a fedora, but it just seems like, and maybe if you work in the fashion industry, you got a fedora lying around. I don't know. I just
Kids
think
as accessories.
it's just I don't know. I just think it's kind of silly, the cool parenting.
Do any of the stand-up skills actually help you as a parent?
None. I don't know. There is something. I mean, my schedule. People that have babies know this. There is. I would do the late shift for feeding the babies. So, like, people are like, I had to get up at 3. And I'm like, well, I'm already up at 3. So I can help out at 3. But that's some of the schedule of a comedian. But I don't know. I think there's... I don't know. That's a great question. But I'm sure there's something that... It's very strange being a dad who happens to be a comedian, because we've had parent-teacher conferences this week, and a lot of the teachers are like, and your kid's funny. Like, that's what I'm looking to hear.
Oh, their major concern.
They make the other kids laugh. Like, I'm like, good, that's what I care about. Or like...
And do they expect you to be entertaining at the PTA meetings as well?
Yeah, or like if there's a behavior problem, they're like, well, they do sometimes talk out of turn, but you're a comedian, right? So it's a little bit strange. And it's weird because, my dad, was, I don't know if, no matter what occupation I'd have, I think I would still be overwhelmed by the process, just the task of being a dad. It's pretty intimidating, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. And I think the feeling is that kind of like whatever you think is right,
yeah,
you're usually wrong.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your new book. It's called Food: A Love Story.
Yes.
It's a beautiful love story.
It is a beautiful love story.
How much do you love food?
It's. I think I really do love food. I think it's. I started stand-up 2,500 years ago. I started stand-up over 20 years ago, and over the course of that time, I've seemed to be drawn to food as a topic, and some of it is I like it that it's universal. I don't have to explain what bologna is to people, or I can have a strong point of view and I won't alienate people. And it's just a topic that's always been kind of something that I've been trying to manage. Like, my wife and I would write everything together, and we always have these things. All right, no more food. And then the next special, it's like, all right, 10 minutes on bacon, So there's something about food that has really just been part of me. And it's not like I grew up where Mario Batali was my dad or anything. It's just a strange kind of, attachment I have to it. Mostly as an outlet for comedy, I think. So, and the book really, I compiled some of it. I wrote a lot of essays specifically for the book, and I had tons of material that didn't work in stand-up. Like, I have 20 pages on cheese, and I have essays on crackers. It's stuff that you wouldn't even contemplate doing in stand-up.
Yeah, you take on crackers.
You're like, hey, everybody, what kind of, you got Triscuits or Wheat Thins people here,
Right.
So it was fun to do, but it's also, when I got done writing it, my wife wanted to do a disclaimer at the end that just said, no one should live this life. But I did get done, and I was like, I've got a problem.
Well, I'd like to get in some of the details because
Sure.
it's great fun. You're not a foodie.
No.
What do you call yourself?
I'm an Edie. I am an Edie, and and by the way, and that's I started writing this book, and I was relatively ignorant on the huge. I mean, I knew that there was the food culture, and I knew that every October there's a food and wine festival. I knew all that, and I knew that rich people go out to dinner every night. But I didn't realize the level of food books that I didn't realize. Like Rachel Ray, that show, there is a celebrity saying, "Here's my cookbook," every day for a year. And, and so I didn't realize that. And so, I don't consider myself a foodie. And some of it is, I don't have anything against foodies. I'm jealous of their culinary escapades, but I'm also not that bored with regular food. I don't need to go to Greenpoint to get a hamburger. Like, I just want the closest, best hamburger, right? So.
Must be hard to eat well and be on the road at the same time.
It's hard because there's, an airport. I think it's illegal to sell good food in an airport.
It's the law.
I mean, it changes, right? It's changing so much, right? As I travel way too much. But there's, just eating healthy. One time I was in South Bend's airport, which is amazing. You should go there because it was designed by Stalin. I was in the South Bend airport, and I said, "Oh, I'll get an apple," and I realized it was a decoration. There was no fruit or vegetables. Not that I like fruits or vegetables, but I was like, I should probably eat something healthy.
And you're not a fan of seafood?
No, I'm not.
Any kind of seafood?
No.
Little salmon with the wasabi?
No, I
and
wish
the
I liked
pepper?
salmon, but salmon, to me, it just tastes like tuna that someone left in the sun. I wish I liked it. I think that's, there's moments where I'm like, oh, I am white trash. And I feel that way with fish and seafood. I can do a shrimp cocktail, but that's a sea cockroach, right? I mean,
and it's
it
just
is.
a conduit for the cocktail sauce.
Yes,
basically.
it really is.
Yeah.
And so, clams and oysters. New York City was very much a destination for oysters, and to me, that's knots in a rock. I don't know if you can say that on NPR.
You revisit a delicacy in your book that you're kind of famous for, and so I thought I'd actually bring some of it out if we could. Is that all right? All
sure.
right. Aaron, could you join us on stage here?
Is it caviar? Here we go.
You could bring it over here. Yeah.
The blessing and the curse.
Yeah.
The blessing and the curse. That's a lovely display.
Thank you.
It's like NPR is so such classy people. People are like, what is, I have to Google what Hot Pockets is.
Did you ever dream when you started to talk about these things that it would become such an important part of your life and a
I
signature
know.
bit?
It's going to put my children through college. Or some of them. I kind of touched on this. It's pretty interesting. As a comedian, you come up with a joke and you usually expand around it. You have no idea you have an inkling of what's going to be funny. But I didn't. This was just luck. The timing of it, the popularity of the rise in the popularity of it, the fact that no other comedian got to it first. It's so strange because it's one of those things where I think we're also witnessing the decline of Hot Pockets now.
Is that sad for you?
No, not really at all. But but like even the fact that they had that recall, right? They had a recall like it was a transmission on a Dodge, It's like, it's food, just throw it away. What do you mean recall it? Because some of the meat was determined to be unsound? That just sounds like you're hiding information, Is it poison? It's unsound. I wouldn't feed it to a baby, It's just the gift that keeps giving.
You bring it up in your new book, and you tell the story of that first time. I think it was at Caroline's.
Yes, it was at Caroline's.
And it was just like one of many little bits that you just decided that...
You're always doing shows, trying to develop material. And it was a showcase show at Caroline's, and I had seen this commercial for this product, and it had the most ridiculous jingle. And it was like, Hot Pocket! And I was like, and I thought it felt like an SNL commercial. It just seemed so ridiculous. And so I went on stage and kind of had a couple of jokes where I was making fun of the jingle and the commercial, and it got some laughs. And I walked off stage, and Vic Henley, who's a comedian, who he was like, "That's really a ripe topic. You got to explore that." And I was like, "I don't know. These people don't even know what it is." But eventually people did, and it's weird. I've done corporate events. I did a corporate event for like the head of Chevy dealers, and it was really interesting because none of those people in the room, there was probably 20 couples, none of them knew what a Hot Pocket was because they were so, they had never done any shopping, it was a strange thing.
I picked some. I enjoyed going to shop for them because you talk about the fact in your book that there's a lot of variety.
There is a huge
which
variety.
I had no idea. I'll spin this around. The limited edition version.
Yes.
I love that.
That's the collector's item, right? Limited edition. It's like there's no self-awareness, right? There's no kind of like, all right, this is just a Jamaican meat pie, right? Limited edition, it's weird because there's something. I mean, my Twitter feed is just filled with every other comment is just someone saying Hot Pocket. I walk through an airport and someone will yell Hot Pocket.
They're not even your name.
And I don't know how to respond. I don't know if I should say thanks or Hot Pocket, But they say kind of like, you know what I'm talking about.
Right.
And so it's very strange.
Have you heard from the Hot Pocket people?
There was, this is going back, because there was an online study that some people emailed me about because they were participants. This is like during the MySpace era, where they were determining if my comedy was helping or hurting sales. And they determined that it was helping through this
Even though
research.
you don't talk about it all that.
I'm not that positive about it. But it kind of goes with the, all press is good press kind of thing. And they know it's not caviar, It's not like people are like, oh, wait a minute, this isn't good? Wait a minute, I've been serving this at dinner parties. They know.
So the other one I loved, which was a surprise to me, is
Chicken
they
broth.
have the healthy version.
Yeah, the lean pocket.
Lean
right?
pocket. I had no idea
Which-
that it's actually good for you, I guess.
Yeah, it's, I talk about it in my act where it's just like the directions are just take out of the box and put it in a toilet. Yeah. Lean pocket. Yeah. And then they have a different color. It's green. So it's like environmentally friendly. It's like composting. Yeah.
And you were also in your routine. You let us know how long you should nuke it.
You should shoot it. You should cook it for 3 minutes, which is exactly how long it stays in your system. But it's come on. It looks like a joke. Let's be serious. Right?
Go ahead.
Oh, they're glued down.
No, it's a little tape there.
Glue it down. He's such a pig. He might start eating them. Spicy beef. Oh, come on, America. But it's an amazing American story, right? This were two brothers. This is the story in Denver, you can drive by a house and they're like, "That's the Hot Pocket house," and there's like a mansion, but I think it's like two brothers that came from Iran, and they came up with what was a Jamaican meat pie or a calzone, and they just renamed it Hot Pocket, and they sold it to Nestle for $500 billion. So it's a pretty amazing story.
Well, congratulations, I think, is in order,
Oh,
though.
thank you.
You, I had seen that also. Your picture is up at Katz's Deli.
Oh, yeah, very important.
How did that come about?
I go to Kansas Deli because it's close to my house. But also, I love pastrami, and I love that it's kind of an old New York kind of thing. And I'll bring my kids there. That'll be the daddy and me time, is me feeding them smoked meat. And so I've brought each of my kids in there, and one time I went in there, and we got our picture taken so people can see that I serve my then 5-year-old smoked meat. And but I go in there a fair amount, and I'm doing this TV show for TV Land and Comedy Central, and Katz's Deli is a pretty important destination in there. That's kind of my office.
What's it? You're shooting it now, or it hasn't come out yet, right?
We'll start shooting it in February.
And what is it called?
It's called the Jim Gaffigan Show. It's like, how arrogant is that, right?
Well, we'll know what it's about.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, do you watch the Food Network, a whole network of food? Is that interesting to you?
I don't. I love food. I understand that people love to watch it, but for me, it's a little bit like, like a strip club. I just, I don't want to go there and watch. So like the Food Network, I had a joke about the Food Network where it just seems a little frustrating, right? And then if you're hungry, it's just kind of painful to watch it, right? So I don't know. I mean, I think I miss that. And I don't enjoy cooking, and that seems kind of inconsistent. They're like, you like to eat, you must love to cook, and I'm like, I like to sleep. I don't like to make beds either. Right?
You cover fast food in your new
Yes.
book, Food: A Love Story, as well. And you had mentioned that you didn't have a McDonald's in your hometown
Yeah,
for a
we
long
did
time,
not.
but you really break it down. Do you have a favorite of the fast foods?
Well, I love Shake Shack. There's different kinds of fast food places, right? But yeah, I mean, I can break it down a lot of different ways. I mean, it depends on the region of the country you're in, right? And so, like, name a city, and I'll tell you where I would eat.
Los Angeles.
Los Angeles, I would go to In-N-Out. And then, like if I was in, and I'm talking chains. So, like, everyone's like, in my hometown, you go to Bob's. I don't know about Bob's. But so if I was in, say, St. Louis, I would go to Steak and Shake. If I was in the upper Midwest, like Wisconsin or Michigan, I would go to Culver's. There's different places. I like Jack in the Box. I think that's not bad.
And I mean,
Everyone's like, this was a mistake. That's the guy who said he liked Jack in the Box. I just love the fact that they have a sauce named Jack Sauce. It's just unbelievable. Not one person at the corporate office going, nah, maybe we shouldn't do that. Not one guy. Five Guys is great too. That's where you go. That's
Five Guys.
Five Guys. is
Yeah,
great.
I had one recently. It was really great.
Great
A little messy, but it was really great.
It's special. And then you get free peanuts too.
You break down the fried chicken now.
Yes.
Is any of this good for you?
No, it's not. It's all poison, and we know that it is. But I'm not saying every meal should be Popeyes. But I don't know if you could do that. You'd probably die pretty quick. But Popeyes is amazing. And then, Kentucky Fried Chicken, it's just amazing. The desperation that some of these fast food places, like, I don't know if you've seen this, it's not in the book, but like, Taco Bell has the waffle taco, and then KFC has like 2 chicken patties with a burger in it. And it's sad. It's like, just go home, you know? It's like you're embarrassing yourself, right?
Yeah. Sometimes they come up with names and you know they're not really food.
Yeah, the double down. You're like, no, don't do that.
They had one when I was a kid at Taco Bell, the Guadalajara. It's like, what's in that?
Yeah.
I have no idea what's in that.
Yeah.
You mentioned bacon earlier. You spend a bit of time in the book talking.
Yes.
That's important to you.
It's over 100 pages.
There is a Food Network show that you would love, which
Yeah.
just bacon. The entire show is just about bacon.
Again, I don't want to watch it. I want to eat it.
Point taken. So why do you think bacon is so important in our society?
I don't know. Supposedly there's studies where you get the same reaction eating bacon that you do doing cocaine. And I think that's great. And I read that and I was like, yeah, that sounds about right. But I don't know. There's something, even the smell, right? It's amazing the effect bacon is. And I think it's really interesting. I talk on about this in the book, is you go to different cultures and, you know, even Canada, their bacon, I mean, it's not bacon, but it's a different type of bacon, right? And then you go to England and their bacon, you're like, you got to cook this longer. You know? This is not bacon. This is like bacon and ham stuck together. You know, you got to fix that. But I just want to help.
And you also have a theory in the book about Kevin.
Yeah, Kevin Bacon. His success is most definitely associated with his name. I mean, you know, you can't tell me that some of his success is not. I mean, it's like you wouldn't want to go to a Kevin Tofu movie or a Kevin Hot Dog movie. Kevin Bacon, you want to go to a movie? Who's in it? Kevin Bacon. You're like, it sounds good. You know, let's grab some lettuce and some, some white bread, and we'll make a little Kevin Bacon sandwich. I guess tomatoes too, right?
You take on Southern food a little bit. You were
Yes.
Complaining about biscuits and gravy.
Oh, I'm not complaining. I love it. I did a tour of the South and a bus tour where I had biscuits and gravy for like 7 days straight, and I still haven't gone to the bathroom. And that tour was 25 years ago. But it's just biscuits and gravy. It's amazing, and it's an example of just how in the South they're like, we give up. We're not even. You know, they're eating that. The fact that they're eating that is a little bit like, all right, you're just not gonna try, but they're eating it in the morning. You know, it's like that's why the South will never rise again, because they're essentially eating paper mache. But it's so good. It's amazing. It's amazing.
You big family, as we talked about, 5 kids. Is it important to eat together, to have meals together with them?
I think there's something. I mean, I ate with them. I mean, I eat all the time. So, but I think there is something kind of important about eating together, and I think it's a luxury. Not a lot of people can do it, and because I work at night, often I can eat meals with them, and they're not that good at it. Like babies, it's like babies are so bad at eating, like they miss their mouth. You're like, how bad are you at eating? If you miss the place where you want, it's embarrassing, really. But I do think that there's something about sharing a meal with someone that is, I don't know, there's a strange intimacy in it, right? Just agree with me.
Sure. Yes.
Yes.
You also confront your own mortality
Yes.
in this book, and you talk a little bit about the last meal.
Right.
Yeah. Do you think about death a lot?
Constantly. No, some of it was, I thought about the idea of a last meal. I just think it's really interesting that I don't even know if it's true, but like on death row, like before they execute you, you can have your last meal, which seems like it seems kind of like a James Bond villain thing. It's like, before I kill you, Mr. Bond, would you like a steak? It's a very strange thing to do. And so, but I think there's the concept of a last meal, and maybe a justification for, definitely a justification for eating unhealthy and having a cheeseburger every 2 hours is, your last meal. You wouldn't want your last meal, like you wouldn't want to spend the rest of eternity just sitting there going, I can't believe I had kale soup. It's like, what'd you eat? I was at Smith & Walensky's and had a steak. What'd you have? I had a power bar. Like you want a meal to count. And, just as you'd want your last moments to be with someone important, you want that meal to count. And so then I kind of detailed what you should be eating based on how you die. So like if you die in prison, you should be eating bologna. Or if you're on a private jet, you should be eating Kobe beef. Or if you die, like, say, from diarrhea, it should be a Hot Pocket. Or dysentery. I didn't say diarrhea.
I did want to congratulate you. You were awarded Concert Comic of the Year.
Yes.
And this year from the American Comedy Awards. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Was there a big ceremony and a knighting? What was that like?
That was, it's weird. It sounds like some made-up award. The concert, the guy who goes on stage award from American Comedy Award thing. No, that was, there was an event in February, and I think it was on NBC or something like that. But yeah, no, it's amazing. Look, the weird thing is, like, I always think of awards as so silly. But when you win one, you're like, well, this isn't that bad. They're not that silly. At least this one's not.
This must be a great time for you because I remember reading Steve Martin's book on being a stand-up, and he basically charts that entire book based on how big the venues got at a certain point.
Right.
And they've been growing and growing for you as well. That must be important and also gratifying to you.
It's important, but there's also, I think that stand-up, the conversation, which is stand-up, because it is a conversation, that the venues shouldn't get too big. Because if it gets, there's a little bit, intimacy is important, and screens and maybe big, larger-than-life performers can do it, but I don't think that it should get that big. Like even this venue is great, and some of it is because of the size, right? It feels a little bit more special, and that's not to say that if we were in Madison Square Garden, it wouldn't have been cool. But there's more of proximity and communication that happens in a smaller place, and so the venues. And even though Steve Martin was and is a giant, I do think that comedy should not get beyond 2,600 seats, even though I do venues all the time that are larger. But
well, I mean, in his book, basically that's what ended that stand-up, is that they were so big, people were calling out bits, and it became impossible for him.
It gets enormous. Like I did an oddball festival show where I was on with a bunch of other comedians, but it was 22,000 people, and you're like, and I think everyone had a good time, but I think there's nuance and subtlety in stand-up that can get lost, in a larger venue, and that's why I'm running for senator. By the way, I have shows at Madison Square Garden. No,
you were
the Barclays Center.
You were recently called the King of Clean by the Wall Street Journal. You're not happy with that clean comic thing,
well,
right?
The clean thing is. It's an asterisk, and people will say, why are you a clean comedian? And I just explain that Jesus told me to. But I do
You dropped the F-bomb tonight already.
Yeah, I know. But I think I think comedians get a lot of credit or criticism for doing the comedy that they would do anyway. So yes, I do curse in everyday life, but some of what I'm talking about in my stand-up. And, I'm rewriting and everything. So it feels like it's not necessary to curse if you're discussing bacon or donuts. It's like, how angry am I? And then, and some of it is kind of personality. I am from a small town in Indiana. I mean, I did curse, and but so it's not kind of I'm not a flamethrower. I'm not somebody who wants to shock everyone. I'm going to shock these people out of their seat. I just want to make people laugh and run for senator. So, but it's weird. So the clean thing is, it feels a little bit like an asterisk. It's like he's clean. But that's also my neurosis, maybe.
You also do an inner voice within your comedy that I know everyone loves and appreciates. How did that come about?
I don't know what you're talking about. No, that was something that was part of my personality since I was like a teenager. It was just an effective tool to diffuse a situation, to help communicate to somebody else that I had self-awareness of the situation. So if I showed up late, I would just go, Jim, I can't believe you're late. Yeah. You said you wanted me to get here on time, but you're late. And so it can kind of, it's an effective tool, right? And it was very, I think I started using it in my act because I am a slow-talking Midwesterner. And so when I would do shows in New York, I would talk like this, and then I would stop, and then people would yell something out. So if I kept talking, or if I talked for them.
Right, because it's usually their voice that you're doing, right?
And so, and some of it is, it's very strange as a performer. You look out and you see different faces, and many of them are smiling or enjoying it, but somebody might be lost in thought, or there might be somebody that, they're just kind of looking at you like with a strange curved up eye, like, what are you talking about? And so just giving that person a voice is kind of funny, and it's a great opportunity to in point of view driven comedy. It's great to be able to go to the other point of view. So if I'm doing a joke, and then the person, somebody that could be offended by what I'm saying, or they could have the opposite opinion and they could say a joke. The inside voice could.
Do you remember when it really killed the first time and you thought, there's something here?
I think it first worked. I did it as a character at this place, Surf Reality, which was on the Lower East Side, and I would do these characters, and one of them was this lady who would just go on stage and just improvise, criticizing the show, and so it worked there, but it was kind of hit or miss in my stand-up. But the first time I think it really worked was at the DC Improv, and I just did it. But there's a balancing act in how much I use it now. It's always fun because it adds an improv element, but I don't want it to be out of control. And I think that's kind of some of it's inspired by Jonathan Winters. I think Jonathan Winters was amazing. And again, just this character where there was a complexity behind it. Not that voice has it, but Jonathan Winters was amazing.
I often think that there might be a lot of competition from comedians, but I sense that that's not true. I sense that it's a very supportive community. Is that mostly right? There's the cliche that comedians don't like each other, and I don't think that's true. I think that we might be there's so many different types of comedians and different personalities and different backgrounds, but we all kind of consider ourselves weirdos. Like, we're all from another planet. So even if we do stand-up that we don't like, we're like, hey, you're a weirdo like me. So there's that common bond. And there's times when I'll be doing a show or in a comedy club and I'll be talking to somebody, and I know that they're a comedian even before they're introduced as a comedian. There's just something kind of a little bit off. And I mean that in a positive way, too. I mean, there's nothing normal about
going on stage and making strangers laugh. I mean, you can't sit there and say, well, the normal thing is you go on stage and seek approval from thousands of people. But, I mean, I love it.
In addition to that approval, though, do you really think about the power of laughter and what you really provide people? Do you think about that sometimes, that there's this physical and emotional response, that people pay money to come so that they can have that kind of experience, and that you deliver that to them?
You know, I think if you start thinking that what you're doing is important, you can it can get away from you. So, I mean, it's great. I mean, I do shows where it's a benefit. You know, they're like, you've helped us fight breast cancer. And I was like, well, I was going to do a show anyway. You know?
Like last night. Tell us about last night.
Well, last night was the Bob Woodruff Foundation hosts Stand Up for Heroes, which is this amazing event. It's an amazing organization. And they have, you know, Bruce Springsteen performs, and there's just amazing comedians. I've been lucky enough to do it a couple times, and it's, you know, it's amazing. Like, the veterans thing is, you know, it's something that I think it's not like we're ever going to get done with like showing appreciation to our veterans. So when you do an event like that, and there's veterans in the audience, and some of these people are, you know, the Bob Woodruff Foundation is kind of filling in the gaps, because I don't think we really take care of our veterans enough, and that's why I'm running for senator. But it's so interesting to do a comedy show where there is such a serious topic underlying it, and there's people with awards that cover their shoulders, and I'm up there telling diarrhea jokes. It's a very strange balance, but again, I'm doing stand-up. I love doing stand-up, and it's just flattering to do it. But it's like, you know, I don't want to give myself credit, you know, for doing anything exceptional. You know what I mean? It was, you know, it's just kind of, you know, when you consider like the service of veterans. I mean, I'm a coward. You know what I mean? I don't want to do that. I don't want to get up in the morning, you know? Or like have someone boss me around. I mean, I got my wife, you know, but I don't need that.
This is totally whizzed by. I've thoroughly enjoyed this. Please join me in thanking Jim Gaffigan for being here tonight. Thank you.
So what do I do?
Just 1 second. Before we go, I just want to thank the Green Space team, the staffs of WQXR and WNYC, the staffs of Caroline's and the New York Comedy Festival, including Louis Ferranda, Lauren Greenhall, and my dear friend Caroline Hirsch. His new book is called Food, A Love Story. Before we thank Jim one more time, we did nuke the Hot Pockets. We do have some of them available for you on your way out. Thank you so much for being here. Jim Gaffigan.